Welcome to the Spirit Anchor YouTube video series and Anchor.fm podcast series. My name is Kristen Schmidt-Dykes, and I'm excited that you're here with us. Our guest today is intuitive spiritual life coach, energy healer practitioner, and channeler Jennifer Passavant. Hi, Jennifer. Thanks so much for being with us here today on our video series. I'm so excited that you're here with us, and I'm excited for you to tell our listeners and viewers a little bit about your background and who you are and how long you've been practicing in the metaphysical realm.
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. So I really started practicing professionally in the fall of 2013. That's when I kind of realized that helping people in the way that I'd been helping people naturally for many years could be done as my livelihood. I didn't know that it was something I could make a business out of. And so it's been great because I've been able to reach a lot more people. And so it initially started with my being an intuitive spiritual life coach where people would start talking to me about a specific issue or challenge, and I would just get intuitive guidance about what was the core issue, where it originated, how they could shift their perceptions or make changes to heal that core wound or shift that perspective in order to move forward in a more positive way. But at the same time, I also realized that I was channeling a divine being. And that's a whole other story. But I thought that would lead to just channeling. Well, as it turns out, he, at one point during the practicing of channeling him, he started moving my hands around my body. And I'm like, what are we doing? And he said, pay attention to what I'm doing to you because you're going to do this on others. We're going to do energy healing. I had no idea that was a part of the original agreement before we incarnated or before I incarnated. And so it just kind of went from there. So yeah, it's been really a very interesting journey, to say the least.
And how long ago was that you first started practicing healing?
That was in 2014, because that's when he first started moving my hands. And then he guided me to learn several different modalities and not necessarily even become certified in them so much, although some I did, but many it was just so that I could recognize what he was doing through me. So if my hands were doing a certain thing, I could go, oh, okay, so I remember learning that that's moving energy in this way and it's doing this sort of thing.
Oh,
so learning the different modalities was more for me to go, oh, versus needing to acquire the specific techniques per se.
Wow, that's great. And so that was a couple years ago. So you've been working, and I believe you said his name, or he identifies as a male entity?
Yeah, he does come forward masculine. I don't believe he has really a gender, but his energy is a masculine energy, which means he's very electric. It's literally like sticking a finger in a light socket too. That's what it feels like to channel him. And his energy is very masculine, very active, very outward. Whereas Quan Yin, who came in, well, at least I thought she came in later, but in terms of healing, she came in later. Her energy is very feminine, very soft, I feel emotionally related, very internal, very different energies. And so that's what I like working with the two of them, is because they kind of balance out the masculine and feminine, even in terms of doing energy healing on others.
That's great. And so she's a Seraph Angel? No, she's your goddess.
She's the goddess.
The goddess ascended master.
Yes. Okay. She's the goddess of mercy and compassion. In Hindu, she's Avalokiteshvara, in which she incarnated as a male. So she's also in the Hindu religion. She could be referred to as Quan Yin as well. But she's a very popular goddess ascended master. And then Ian is the Seraph Angel. Right. And he's the one he didn't have a name, but humans have to name everything. And so he gave himself the name Ian as an homage to my Scottish background. So Ian is Scottish for John, which is Hebrew for gift from God.
Oh, that's awesome. And so when you were channeling them, did you ask them these questions? Like, can you tell me about the genesis of where you come from or the origins? Or was it something that you just felt innately when they started working through you?
No, I started asking questions, and they kind of came in like bits and pieces. And so I didn't get the full picture all at once, but they'd kind of give me, well, at least Ian, like Quan Yin, I already knew about. I knew who she was. I was familiar with what she stood for and what her purpose was, but Ian was a whole new thing. And so I had to kind of learn in little bits and pieces who he is, where he's from, what we were meant to do together. And I did get a lot of help from other people because I couldn't at first hear him or communicate with him. It took a lot of practice for me to be able to both hear him in my mind, but also have him speak through me. Okay. And so I received a lot of help from other channelers who could communicate with him more clearly before I could. So I give a lot of gratitude to a lot of help from wonderful friends and people. But I learned that, he's a Seraph Angel. He's like an archangel. He's actually an ascended Arcturian, if you're familiar with that. So a lot of those beings that we believe are angels are really ascended beings who existed in other realms, dimensions, and star systems.
That's fantastic. And then, so I guess my curiosity now since they're angels, they've never really incarnated as humans. They've never had the human soul. Okay. So they're other dimensional celestial creatures, which I think is just fascinating. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
And then do you work with them in tandem or with your other guides when you're doing healings? Because I know that we all have numerous guides around us, and I know some are designated just towards our healing modalities. But do you have, how many guides, do you know how many guides you actually have?
I know there are loads that haven't even identified themselves, but I know of many. But I mean, we all have hordes. Right. We are all we all have a very large entourage. And so those that feel they need to make themselves known have made themselves known. But in terms of energy healing, I know that I work specifically with Ian and Quan Yin, but I call in everybody because I'm kind of the more the merrier kind of person.
Right.
So, but in terms of channeling, so when I do an energy healing session, there's always a channeled message that comes through at the end. And sometimes it's Ian, sometimes it's Quan Yin, sometimes it's a being that is more related to the person on whom I'm working. Sometimes it's a being that I've never channeled before. They don't identify themselves. I know that they're not Ian or Quan Yin because their energy feels different or they communicate differently. So in terms of energy healing, though, as far as I've been made aware, it's only Quan Yin and Ian. But like I said, we're guided by
numerous.
Oh yeah, I call in everybody. Yes. Oh yes.
And you had mentioned it took you a little while to kind of figure out how to communicate, especially with Ian. Now, I believe you are clairsentient and clairaudient, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And clairvoyant as well.
Yes, of course, clairvoyant. So when you started being able to communicate with Ian, for example, was it clairaudient? Was it clairsentient? Was it just a feeling? How would you describe that communication method?
Well, I felt him first and foremost because, like I said, his energy is really very powerful. And I can't go into the process of how I came to better channel him, but let me tell you, it was a process because his vibration is so high that it took a lot for me to a lot of breathing practices and all kinds of things to get my vibration to where we could actually merge so our energies are now merged, and he comes in through the back of my heart chakra. Okay. So at first it was very much a feeling of his energy. He would make sounds through me, but it took him a while to practice learning how to speak through a human mouth. He's never been a human before. He's never had to speak orally before. So that took practice. And so it was more in my mind or giving me kind of a knowing or an understanding because so I'm claircognizant as well in that regard. But a lot of it was initially working with other people, but the feelings and the practicing hearing him in my mind came first. And then the communicating out of a mouth, that came dead last. That was dead last.
How open, because obviously I may be a little bit different than a lot of your clients because I'm also a healer myself and have certain psychic abilities. But when you talk to your clients about the healing that you're going to do, and I would presume because they're coming to you initially for this healing that they are somewhat open-minded, but do you share with the clients about these ascended masters and the angel that comes and helps with the healing, or do you just kind of do your thing and then just then wrap up the process with your clients about what's happened? Do you find that your clients are open to receive these messages and basically absorb the information that you're giving them about these celestial creatures, or is there some resistance?
No, as far as my experience, they've all been very, very open to it. I lay it out very clearly on my website because I kind of feel like I'm just going to put myself out there. And if you feel guided to come to me because you feel like you resonate with what I do, come to me. And if you don't, you won't. There are plenty of other healers to choose from. And so it's always been very well received. And I always check with the client who's contacting me. You've read what I do, right? You know how this works, right? And if they don't, I make sure to explain it to them so that they have a full understanding of how I work. And I also explain that all healing is really self-healing, and that all we're doing is providing an opportunity for it, but their agreement to it and their allowance of it, like their desire of it and allowance of it, is really what is healing them.
So you're like a conduit with their higher self once they agree that the healing can take place.
Yeah, and that's true with any modality, whether you're a medical doctor, an herbalist, a psychiatrist. The client has to want the healing and allow it to take place.
Sure.
The practitioner, no matter the modality, is just providing the opportunity for that. And so I don't look at myself as doing the healing. I and the beings that I work with are providing the opportunity for it. And so we can do the whole healing and the person can initially get something out of it. But if they go right back into their old ways of thinking or their old emotional state, they've just negated all of the work that was done, but that was their choice.
Sure. Free will.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about your Ascended Master. And you say, how do you say her name?
Quan Yin.
Quan Yin. Thank you very much. You had mentioned you'd given us a little bit of background on her and how she comes to you and how she's kind of just always been there. Does she and the other healers or the other spirits that you work with, well, I won't call them spirits, I will call them entities. Is that a correct way? Are they helping numerous people at the same time throughout the planet and other dimensions? Are they constantly working with other healers, or are they kind of designated just to you while you're on this, your time here on Earth?
So Quan Yin works with anyone who calls on her, but really the same is true with Ian. It's just nobody knows about him but me. And so when now
all of our viewers and listeners
exactly. And so anyone who were to call on him he would go to them. When I first learned about the fact that I would be working with this particular being, I was told that one of 4 people on the planet with whom this is going to be challenging to explain. So within each dimensional realm, there are subsets. And so he's within a particular subset group that works specifically with the true message of Yeshua, or who many people refer to now as Jesus, but his name was Yeshua ben Yosef. And so that's the group within which he works. So it was kind of set up where this group of beings would then connect with humans and try to work through them to further that message, whether it be healing or your own innate divinity, all of Yeshua's true original messages. And so I know that there was a child that they were starting to become successful with. I don't remember about the other 2, but as far as I know, anybody else that were to call on Ian, like when I go talk to other healers and I say, you can talk to Ian too, they can start talking to Ian and getting help and information. So he's not mine. I'm just is the only one that he started working with. So
that's fantastic. And I think a lot of I've talked to a lot of people who know their guides intimately, and they know the profound help that is given through them. Like we were saying, how you're kind of a conduit for your clients. And I think I don't know, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I think that they're there and willing and eager to help us. We just need to ask.
Yes, because they can't violate our free will, so they can't help us unless we ask.
Yes.
Exactly.
That's great. That's great. Okay. So, but we've been talking a lot about celestial beings, and we've been talking a lot about these, an ascended master. For the people who don't clearly understand these divine beings, can you just give us an overview in your experience and with your background, in addition to ascended masters and angels, can you speak to the other type of entities that work with healers or just that are around us all the time, kind of what they do and how they do it?
Yeah, well, and in terms of what they do and how they do it is very dependent upon the relationship between them and the individual and the openness of that individual. But we've got spirit guides, we've got totems, which are animal spirits, we've got our ancestors, so anyone who is familial who has passed on. We have got, and spirit guides typically are a being that had incarnated as a human with us and then said, in the higher realms, I agree to no longer incarnate, but be your guide through the rest of your incarnations. But you can have more than one. So you're not limited to one spirit guide. It could be, like we said, ascended masters. It could be angels. It could be beings from different realms and dimensions. There's a whole host of elementals, so beings that are assigned to guide and protect the earth realm and the elements. There are just a whole host of beings around us.
Right. And aren't we lucky as humans?
Yeah.
Very lucky.
We need it.
I think people always say, wow, I was really lucky that, this bad thing didn't happen to me. And I'm like, oh, you were protected. Trust me. Like,
If it was meant to happen, it would have happened. Exactly.
And I'm very lucky where I feel energies, and I always can tell. I know a few of my guides, and I know, and I've actually had the pleasure of encountering a few angels and some more divine beings that, through meditation that have come to me. And at first, I have to admit, I was a little skeptical because I thought it was my mind. Like, there's no way that this very, very special, entity came to visit me. And then I thought, well, why not? I believe in my spirit guides. I know I have a higher self. I know and I believe, because this is, not only a passion of mine, but I have experienced so many wonderful celestial and paranormal things, if you will, that, why not? And I think for most people, when I try to explain that there's more out there than just, human to human contact, I always say, hey, it doesn't cost you anything to believe it. If you really feel it in your soul, then they're there to help you. And they're there to help you whether we call on them or not. I truly believe that. And I've seen it happen. So that's great.
Yeah.
All right. So this has been the first segment with our wonderful guest, Jennifer Passavant. Thank you to all of our viewers and listeners out there on our Spirit Anchor YouTube channel and on the Anchor FM podcast series. We're going to have one more episode here with Jennifer Passavant. This is a 2-part series where we're going to be talking about why we incarnate, the law of one, and the purpose of duality. In the meantime, if you would like information on Jennifer or to schedule a session, you can visit her at www.angelhealingenergy.net. And we'll also make sure that we have links in this presentation for you. So until the next segment, thanks everybody, love and light, and we'll see you real soon.